Well, welcome to the 700 Club. More evidence of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, that's UNRWA, collaborating with Hamas. Israel has released video of Hamas terrorists operating next to UN vehicles at an UNRWA facility in Rafah.
Meanwhile, reports are circulating that the Biden administration is set to send more than $1 billion in weapons and ammunition to Israel. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
On Israel's 76th Independence Day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with wounded IDF soldiers. He said he was impressed by the message that several soldiers gave him: continue until the end, until a decisive victory over Hamas. He also said October 7th was a watershed moment in Israel's history.
On Simchat Torah, we endured an event on a biblical scale. Our enemies attacked us, exactly on the day when the people of Israel celebrate the completion of study from Genesis to Deuteronomy and start again.
As Israel celebrated a sober Independence Day, some positive news came with reports that the Biden administration is going ahead with a $1.2 billion arms package for Israel, including tank ammunition and mortar rounds. Last week, Biden announced the U.S. withheld a shipment of bombs to protest Israel's plans to invade Rafah. The operation to eliminate Hamas in Rafah continues at a steady pace as the IDF slowly advances against the terror group's last battalions there. Hundreds of thousands of Gazans are fleeing the war zone. Israel has long accused the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, of collaborating with Hamas. Now it's releasing video of Hamas terrorists operating next to UN vehicles at an UNRWA facility in Rafah.
Today we revealed unusual documentation of armed terrorists next to UN vehicles that were located a few days ago, carrying out shootings inside the compound of UNRWA of the UN in East Rafah.
Foreign Minister Israel Katz said on X, the UN can't hide the truth. Quote, UNRWA is an arm of the terrorist organization Hamas. At a ceremony marking Israel's Independence Day, President Isaac Herzog emphasized recovering the hostage in Gaza is a top priority for the Jewish people.
These days we are full of the pain of bereavement, pain for the wounded, the pain for civilians uprooted from their homes, the pain for the hostages. I reiterate that there is no greater mitzvah than redeeming the captives.
But the fate of the 132 hostages still in Hamas' hands seems precarious. Mediators in Qatar say negotiations to reach a ceasefire and free hostages appear to be at a stalemate. On Tuesday, Hamas fired rockets into southern Israel, including Sderot, where thousands of Israelis marched calling for Israel to control Gaza after the war.
We want to tell everybody in Israel and everybody in the world that Gaza is very, very important to us, and it has to be, again, in Israeli hands, because if it won't be in Israeli hands, we won't finish the things that we started doing in this war.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Oh, there's a few, just take away the fact that Hamas is still firing rockets into Israel. It's absolutely incredible that the world would be calling on ceasefire and Israel be the target of that call. What about Hamas? Can they please stop firing rockets? Can they please release all of the hostages? Can they surrender? What they did was absolutely horrific. What they're continuing to do, absolutely horrific. Israel has no choice. If you're firing rockets into that country, the country has to respond. They just can't say, well, I'm sorry, our hands are tied by international opinion. They are going to have to go in. In this battle of ideologies, and it is a battle of ideologies, you're not going to win that battle with arms. Now, if they're firing rockets at you, you have to stop that. But the ideology has to be addressed head on. Currently, we're not doing a good job on the PR side of things. We're sending very mixed messages around the world that we're going to withhold weapons for Israel. Now we're sending weapons to Israel. We're going to take UNRWA's funding away. That happened in the Trump administration. President Trump said this is ridiculous. They're aiding terrorists. They're training in hate ideology. Our taxpayer dollars shouldn't go to that. Very first week of the Biden administration, all of that funding restored. And now we're seeing that absolutely UNRWA is part of Hamas. They've been training children in schools to hate Jews. That's why you have a Hamas militant on a cell phone on October 7th calling his parents and just bragging about how many Jews he killed and them celebrating. It's an ideology that fuels this. In our struggle, let us stand strong with Israel. Let's stand strong against anti-Semitism, against this ideology of hate that says from the river to the sea. They want to wipe Israel out. They want to commit genocide. They want to kill every single Jew. Let us stand on the side of Israel in this struggle and be very clear. This ideology cannot survive. And especially it won't survive on our tax dollars. It's time to absolutely end all aid to UNRWA. Absolutely stand with Israel. We stand with them until this struggle is over. In other news, President Biden has imposed sweeping tariff hikes on China yesterday, specifically targeting electric vehicles. And you may not know this, but there's currently an electric vehicle for sale in China for just $12,000. It's been called a Tesla killer. Well, there's also semiconductors, other goods. The White House accused China of cheating in its trade policies. Dale Hurd has the story.
President Biden defended the new tariffs on Chinese products, saying that China's government handouts to its companies mean they don't have to turn a profit, giving them an unfair advantage in global trade.
For too long, it hasn't been fair. For years, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese companies across a whole range of industries. And when you make tactics like these, you're not competing. It's not competition, it's cheating.
Biden slapped tariffs on a range of high-tech industries from Chinese electric vehicles, advanced batteries, solar cells, medical equipment, and on raw materials like steel and aluminum manufacturing. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesman said China opposes unilateral tariff increases that violate WTO rules and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. On CBN's Faith Nation, China expert Gordon Chang said tariffs don't necessarily mean higher prices for American consumers buying Chinese goods.
I think that there is a lot of exaggeration when people talk about the costs that are going to be imposed on American consumers. In 2008, China absorbed about 4/5 of the cost of the Trump tariffs. They did that through Chinese government policies, and also private exporters absorb costs. So I expect the same thing to happen this time.
The White House has targeted Chinese green technology, especially electric vehicles, when China is looking to undercut American car makers with cheaper products as demand for EVs slow.
Folks, look, I'm determined that the future of electric vehicles will be made in America by union workers, period.
6 years ago, former President Trump slapped tariffs on over $350 billion worth of Chinese imports, mostly at a 25% rate. Biden's tariffs cover only about $18 billion worth of imports, but at a much higher rate, quadrupling electric vehicle tariffs to 100%, doubling the rate on semiconductors to 50%, and tripling tariffs on steel and aluminum products.
When Joe Biden was president, he was a critic of Trump's tariffs, saying they were creating more pain for Americans.
Tuesday, Trump called him out for waiting so long.
Where have you been for 3.5 years? They should have done it a long time ago.
Now that he's running again, Biden's feeling the heat from unions and industries in key swing states, suffering from unfair Chinese trade practices. A new poll shows Biden trailing Trump by 7 points in Michigan, the home of the auto industry. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, the electric vehicles coming out of China, I read a report just yesterday that it's a Detroit killer, that the cost of these vehicles is so low that there's no way Detroit can ever compete with them. If you're in the market for a new car now, what's your initial threshold? Is that $30,000? Is that $40,000? When you consider the average price is near $50,000, and then you have an electric vehicle being produced in China that's getting rave reviews, and it has a mileage of like over 260 miles, and it's being sold in China for $12,000. It's being sold in Latin America for $24,000. What would it be sold for in America is open to question. With these tariffs, it's not going to be sold in America. But is this a Detroit killer? Are we looking at how do we completely remake our automobile industry? And do we have the political will to do that? I hear the political statements that it needs to be made in America, it needs to be made by union workers, but the economic reality of being outcompeted by China is right here and right on our doorstep.